fight. We don't have to kill. Everybody in the whole wide world really just needs to chill. No, we don't have to fuss, no. We don't have to fight.
Hello, welcome back. Check out my crazy outfit. It's episode 13. And why am I dressed like this? I'll tell you that in just a second when I introduce our guest. But first, I want to say, if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. And thank you if you've already subscribed, or tell your friends. Anything to help spread and gain some more viewership here would be much appreciated. If you prefer to listen audio only, last episode I mentioned that we were going to be on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, which we are. But we were having some issues where only the most recent episode would go up, and as soon as we would put a new episode, it would kick the other one out. So there was only ever the most recent one. We think we just fixed that. So as of tonight, hopefully it should have the whole back catalog of all the episodes we've done so far. And finally, if you want to contact us, which no one seems to so far, it's justchillpodcasting@gmail.com. Hit me up if you want to say anything, really, feedback, or if you have a cool idea for a guest. But speaking of guests, here we go. Our guest today is Barbra Dean, also known as the Edible Chef.
Hello.
And
Thanks for having me.
the Edible Chef, of course, relating to my outfit. Cannabis Chef. So, yeah, because your name at first, I was like, Edible Chef. It almost sounds like you are edible, like the chef.
I'm kind of yummy sometimes.
So I don't know. Like, I mean, the first thing I kind of wanted to know, well, first of all, actually, I wanted to say, are you superstitious? Because this is episode 13.
I love it, actually. That's one of my favorite numbers. I'm also a Halloween baby, so
Okay.
I've always
You
had
like
a
the spooky
fascination with the number 13.
I figured
I'm
it- I figured-
superstitious, but I like all the superstitions. I'm the weirdo that kind of embraces them.
I kind of figured you were going to either say one or the other, that you'd either be like, oh, shit, and get superstitious, or you would say, I love that kind of stuff. So there you go.
No, I can't talk to you anymore.
Yeah, you have to leave immediately. Or wouldn't it be weird if something like just catastrophic suddenly happened? Like,
Right?
I don't know what. I can't come up
The
with a good
lights out
example.
or
With
something.
a flood.
That'd be weird.
Okay, so the main thing I need to lead with here is, like, what's your origin story as far as getting into this stuff, your cannabis origin story? So when did you get into cannabis, period? But then how did that evolve into, wanting to do cooking and baking related to cannabis?
Okay, well, I grew up in a small town just outside of Ottawa. I'm sure you've all heard of it, Smith Falls, Ontario.
Hey, Hershey Factory.
Absolutely.
Used to be.
So I used to walk to school with the smell of chocolate in the air.
Oh.
I hit about 13 or so, and it was just a grunger girl, like hiding in my room with music, and kind of fell in love with cannabis because it helped me not be so shy. It was like kind of a catalyst for me to be a little more social.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I kind of fell right into it. I loved it. And I was, again, it kind of another reason to hide more in my room. But at the same time, it also helped me socially a lot as well. So
That's interesting, because a lot of people, I find it can go the other way when they try weed and makes them more reclusive and maybe more of a loner. But I guess like parties and stuff, if that's what you mean, like just the social aspects of smoking weed are a lot of the time, having fun and making new friends and stuff.
Absolutely. And I feel like a lot of my teen years was just that. Small town, we don't have much else to do. I mean, there's other things people were getting into, but that was never really my style. I've always been kind of a smart girl, academic. I didn't want my head too cloudy, but it was still a little bit of enough to kind of shut the mind up at times and kind of bring me out of my shell.
It's interesting how, like, when we were that age, I mean, we weren't supposed to be smoking weed, but I never really felt like it was that big of a deal, because there was always teenagers that smoked pot and drank before they were supposed to and stuff. And it was, usually not that big as long as you didn't go in much harder drugs. But nowadays they've learned a lot about that you're really not supposed to start fucking with weed until you're a fully formed adult brain, that they think there's links, to mental illness and stuff like that. And I just wonder what you think. Like, do you agree, or?
I can't help but to agree with that, to be honest, because even though it was kind of a catalyst to bring me out of my shell when I was younger, I can't help but to agree with the science that is coming out on that. I moved away from Smith Falls about 10 years ago. I got the chance to go to school for culinary, so I took it. But in my culinary route, I kind of went more the dietary kind of nutritious way of cooking instead of the salt and sugar chef thing. The salt and sugar thing,
Good
I
call.
love it. I love it, but it's so competitive and so saturated. And I felt like I kind of wanted to do better.
Although the health food market's getting saturated and competitive too.
It is kind of, but at least it's
been a
something that's
shift.
good for people.
Yeah, that's a good shift.
Not
exactly.
that the other isn't good. Like, it's good to spoil yourself, but I like the way I felt better when I ate good food. So I went that way.
100%. You can't deny that. If you eat healthy and you get exercise, you're going to feel better.
You feel so much better. And that's really kind of helped with what I feel is kind of the side effects of me starting smoking so young. And just me studying nutrition a little bit within my culinary degree. I learned a little bit about the endocannabinoid system and how we digest our food and how the brains work and, just chemical processes in our body. And I can't help but to kind of feel like I am a bit of an example of, yes, it kind of does make you anxious and more depressed, and you feel those things.
That's what I was kind of leading to, because I'm in the same situation where you wonder, like, okay, well, do I have anxiety and depression and whatever else, OCD for me, because I smoked weed at a young age and dabbled with different drugs? Or was I dabbling with drugs because I had anxiety at that age, which I can kind of also attest to? So, which came first? But
absolutely. I struggle with that as well. And I also question myself, is it the cannabis that made me feel that way? Or
would this have happened either way,
Well, we live in a pretty busy society. We have a lot on our plate and going on, and what we have to juggle and manage to just survive. It's enough to induce anxiety as well. So,
well, yeah, not only that, but I wonder about people coming up now, like youth that are growing up now, the exposure to all the smartphones even, and also just food, depending on what you're eating. If you're growing up and not eating healthy, that could be a huge game changer too. People just eat garbage food all the time.
That's another reason why I kind of swayed more the nutritious side of chefing, is because I wanted to feed our youth and our children and give them that healthy start, because I seen how much it helped me, and I wanted to encourage the youth to do that more. Our education system's a little messed up when it comes to kitchens, sadly.
Definitely.
So I'm kind of in the process of currently hanging up my chef jacket a little bit and kind of stepping more into the teaching, the social end. That's why I think I'd kind of like to work in cannabis a little more than cooking now.
Well, I think you're obviously a perfect fit for it. I mean, you have passion for it, and you know how to cook, and you clearly have experience with pot. So what else do you need?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think you'll be a hit, whatever you try.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So what I was going to say, one thing I wanted to get into, one thing I told you to maybe bring a bit of edibles that were on the lower THC side, because I thought this would be kind of a funny story to bring up, which is when my mom and dad, what was this, like 3 years ago or something, 4 years ago?
No, it wasn't that long.
2 years ago, maybe? Okay, so a couple of years ago, my mom and dad kind of expressed, this was right before legalization or around the same time. They were like, well, you know what? Now that it's going to be legal soon, we really kind of want to try edibles.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and we were very, all for that. And I had just started making butter, and I was making some really delicious cakes and stuff. And we just had a party like the week before where we made a cake that got everybody high, and we still had half of it left over. So I guess it was pretty strong in their defense. But we had some of that left over, and we came over and we brought some board games, which I don't know how the hell we ever thought we were going to play fucking board games with them. But yeah, so here's where the story's going to differ between him and I, because he's going to say it was a ginormous slab of cake. And in my memory, we gave them a smidgen because I knew it was fairly powerful because a lot of our friends had done it and gotten pretty high. So you think it was, are you trying to give me a size with your hands? Okay. So anyways, they eat it, and they had very, very different experiences right off the bat. So my dad, within like 5 minutes, I want to say, he started just feeling like he was going to puke or something, or just very dizzy. He was like, oh, I've had it from edibles too. If you overdo it, kind of greening out or whatever they would call it,
Yeah.
20 minutes of feeling good, laughing my ass off, got hungry, ate a bunch of stuff. Shortly thereafter, got the spins, started feeling nauseous, and upstairs to bed. There's
such a variety of things that could have contributed to that. Maybe it was because something you ate, if you had too much sugar all at once or something. Or
I don't know if people heard that on that.
He said he had 20 minutes of giggling good fun before he started feeling really gross after eating. So either way, my dad basically is like MIA. After like 25 minutes, he's like, I'm going to go lie down upstairs, completely abandoning my mother, who's super fucking high. And then my mom was like kind of the opposite. She was like, it was very bizarre, actually, experience for me, because it was like I was babysitting my 16-year-old mom. I'm not even exaggerating in the slightest. Kelly can attest.
It's so different to see them in that state, right? I had one of those situations with my mom once where I worked as a pari-mutual back when I lived back home. So a pari-mutual takes bets for a racetrack, and we were attached to a bar. And I finished my shift and I went next door and there's my mom smoking with a drink in her hand. And I've never seen her do either of this in my life.
Oh,
So it was
shit.
very weird to see her in that element. So
Did she just secretly do it and you didn't know about it, or that was actually a kind of first time for her?
I don't know. I think she's just really good at hiding it from us, or she's just, we were kind of we were starting to get older. So maybe she's just like,
didn't care.
yeah, well, I'm going to get back to enjoying these
Yeah,
things. Or
fair
now I
enough.
can try it. I don't have to worry about my kids so much. So,
Yeah. No, that's fair.
yeah.
When my mom got into that state, it was almost like beyond how high you would get in high school. Maybe it's because she hadn't. My mom used to smoke when she was, in her 20s or something. She told me in like college and all that shit. But she hadn't for like a really long time. And she found that when she did quit in her 30s, I want to say early 30s before she had us, she was getting a lot of paranoia, the usual shit you hear from people that are not really into it anymore.
Yeah.
But she got so high. Like the things that happened were things you would see they would write in like a comedy movie that you'd be like, people don't get that high. It's like, yes, they do. She at one point, she was just like, oh, when she was sitting down, and it's because the coaster that was on the bottom of her cup, it had like stuck on to her like cup full of water that she picked up.
Yeah.
And the coaster fell off, and then we were like, whoa, Mom, what's wrong? She's like, the coaster fell, and I was waiting for the water to come rushing out because she thought the bottom of her cup had fallen off.
She sounds adorable.
So one thing I've heard about this is that because you eat it, it metabolizes differently. And I've also heard that gummies versus, say, chocolates. Someone had told me that the chocolates, because of the fat content, that the cannabinoids or how do you say
Cannabinoids.
Cannabinoids will like attach to the fat cells and hit you faster or something like that, or something.
I guess that kind of makes sense too. There would be a huge difference in how you would metabolize that. Just metabolizing THC period is different from when you eat it as opposed to smoke it. Because when you smoke it, it's going to your lungs and directly into your blood.
Yeah.
Whereas when you eat it, it actually has to go through your digestive tract, hit your liver and your stomach, and it digests it in a whole certain way. I'm also pretty sure like you said, there is a huge difference between a gummy and chocolate because of the fat content involved. Absolutely. So when we digest food, we digest fats within our food, our livers actually work harder and process it differently. Gallbladder, I believe, is also, it secretes bile to help us break down the fats. So there's actually.
Do you want me to flip this? My dad actually is a biologist.
Oh, cool. Please tell me this is making sense.
No, so far you're fine.
Boom.
Perfect.
He's not a practicing biologist by any means.
Well, that's a dream of mine, as I've always wanted to take food and nutrition science in school. So I'm kind of hoping I'm a bit of a geek for it.
My mom and my dad both took biology. My dad has a master's and my mom has a bachelor, I guess. Yeah. And but they were studying bugs entomology.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's just weird because neither of them like did anything with that for their jobs, you know?
So I'd be kind of curious to attach our two passions, because I'm kind of curious, like, what's in a bug and how does it benefit us, and what kind of bugs
I thought
can
you
we
were going to
digest?
say what happens when bugs get stoned.
That too.
Because I was going to say I've probably, as much as that's animal
wanna
cruelty,
know.
I'm going to say I've probably done that as a teenager, blown weed smoke on bugs. And
That's what I was going to say. I want to know
watch
how
them
that
fly
spider
all-
felt after I blew that great big cloud in his face.
maybe he loved it, you know?
I think he did. He kind of went up and just hung out in his corner. So.
I've seen dogs that really love it, and they'll come up and like lick the air and try to get near the smoke. And you got to wonder, maybe it's because it's helping their arthritis you don't know about because they can't fucking tell you because they're a dog.
That's
you know what
just
I
it.
mean? So I would never intentionally blow weed in some animal's face and be like, you're getting fucking stoned. But if you're smoking a joint and your cat decides to keep coming around, like maybe there's a fucking reason, and I'm sure as hell not forcing him, you know? I crack the
kitties.
window, you know? I barely ever smoke inside anyway.
When my Dayglow was younger, he was very much like that. Anytime I would smoke one, he would come hang out on my shoulders. So I had a feeling he loved it.
You can buy CBD oil at the vet.
Oh, yeah. They're getting into that now that everything's legal. Yeah, my dad just said you can buy CBD oil at the vet.
Yes.
Which is kind of cool. I love that things are turning the tide now a little bit.
I like that we're doing more research there too, particularly with the subject we were talking about earlier with youth and how it affects them and our brain growth and development.
Mm-hmm.
I think legalization is very important for that fact that we're going to start watching those things and doing the science there, and we will see if there's a difference.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. It's the train's not going to stop now, right? Like,
No, I certainly hope not, because it is very important that we look into this and the benefits we can get from it.
yeah, because it seems like just even like whatever they've been able to do, especially with cannabis, it's almost all positive. Like, It might not be right for everyone. That's a different story. But it's pretty hard to find negatives other than if you smoke it, it could cause cancer in your lungs.
And that's just it. And humans
Shit like
will,
that, you know?
Humans will find that one negative thing, and the brain will go right to focusing on that and
But
ignore
smoking,
these.
it's a choice anyways, right?
Exactly.
So that's not even really, it's kind of a moot point because you can choose to not ingest it in that manner, you know? Cannabis seems like all winner. And there's similar things happening with shrooms, right? Like in places where they've legalized, I believe California and Colorado right now both have legal shrooms. I don't know if it's for recreational, but certainly for studies and stuff now they're allowed to.
Yeah,
it might
it's
even
like a
be
psychiatric
recreational
level that they're studying it.
Well, there's so much that can be done in looking into microdosing and the results that can have for mainly helping anxiety, depression, a lot of things like that.
I agree with it, and I believe it. Again, what a lot of my information I get offline, so it's hard to say if the source is credible or not.
You have to be careful, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I read about that is because I'm very interested in that as well. Actually, the psychosigillum, I think it's called.
Okay.
So that's the element
field?
within it that gets us high. But
Of what?
Of mushroom?
Oh, no, it's psilocybin, isn't it?
Psilocybin. Sorry.
Is it psilocybin or
I gotta get better at
psilocybin?
saying these words.
Psilocybin, yeah, okay.
Psilocybin, pardon me.
No, I used to always call it cybacillin or something and flip it around when I was a kid.
Okay, it takes some practice with all these biological words.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. That's
If
just
you don't
it.
get a
That's-
word right, man, then
Well,
we
that's one
figured it
thing
out.
particularly I learned like the last few days I've been studying. I went and took a program and I actually become a certified food safety teacher.
Yeah, you were telling me. That's awesome.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. But that is one thing I learned particularly in day 2 when it was all teaching is we have to know how to say these words if we're going to teach people. So.
It definitely commands a level of respect if you don't flub what you're trying. It's the same thing with doing comedy. You know what I mean? People can tell when you're choking or when you're nervous, and then that becomes a palpable energy. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
if you want people to listen and really take direction from you, then people can take it too far too, where they become too over authoritative.
Authoritative.
There we go.
What was it called?
Authoritative.
Director position, I think it was called. So that's
Oh.
where you you
Oh,
set things. You're very military.
Commanding, yeah.
Yeah, commanding. That was the word I'm looking for.
I love when I see people though that get into a position of power and manage to like execute what they need to do the job, but they find a way to do it and not be a piece of shit. You know what I mean?
Exactly. With empathy. That's all it takes. That
Yeah, but
magic
I
word.
would say more often than not, it goes the other way with a lot of the commanding roles that are out there,
Oh
be
my
it
God.
the military or politics or whatever.
Chef for 10 years, man. Like
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm sure you can relate. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's why again I'm considering hanging up the chef jacket.
You met a
and
couple
kinda-
Gordon Ramsays along the way.
Well, I've actually been very fortunate that way. There hasn't been very many chefs like that. I wouldn't stay very long if they were like that.
Yeah.
Again, I try to be careful what surrounds me when it comes emotional wise.
Well, and you don't seem like someone that would. You seem like someone that would speak up too. If
I do. I
I
really
get that
do.
vibe off you right away. Yeah, I should say you're the third rando. That's I keep track of my randos, which are guests that come on that I've never basically met before.
Oh, perfect.
So I've done 13 episodes, and you're the third person where it was basically like, "Hey, nice to meet you," and then we fucking go downstairs. So, rando
No, it's-
number 3, and now I'll put a screen thing up when I edit this.
Hi, another magic number.
Rando. When you were saying you mentioned something we were talking about earlier, I thought you were going to bring up something to do with vision because before we started recording, we were talking about the fact that you're wearing contacts and you have a fairly heavy prescription, and I'm wondering like with weed, isn't that like one of the oldest kind of things that we've been using it for is like glaucoma and shit?
Yes.
I want
but
to say that's probably the oldest thing that I ever heard when I was a kid. That was like the one reason you would get a prescription for weed.
You're
is-
absolutely right. I should check myself better for that. I don't know if I have glaucoma. I think my eye issues are a little different. I think it has more to do with the retina than it does.
I honestly just shoved this in there because I wanted to tell you that story.
Okay.
So we were talking
I don't know
about.
if I know enough about this to chat about it.
No. I was going to tell you the story about that would scare you from ever wanting laser eye surgery.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
I do
just-
want to hear this because it
Okay.
is something I thought of, but I don't know if my eyes are good for that.
Well, so that there you go. We were talking about this before we started recording that she has a heavy prescription, and I was like, well, wouldn't you be a candidate to maybe consider getting laser eye surgery? But then I mentioned there was a story I heard about within the last year, and I believe it was in Ontario. I don't know if Dad can fact check this, but maybe not. Anyways, it was a guy who got laser eye surgery somewhere in the Toronto area, I believe, and he afterwards started getting like incessant like ringing headaches that wouldn't go away, and he eventually fucking killed himself.
Oh, my God.
Did you hear about this?
I did not hear about that.
Okay, well, now I hope I'm not pulling this out of
interested.
my ass because people were talking about it at work, and I could have sworn I heard about it on the radio or looked it up online or something when we were talking about it. Now I want you to fact check it.
Okay.
No, I want you to fact check it. Okay. Well, now I hope I'm not pulling this out of my ass because people were talking about it at work, and I could have sworn I heard about it on the radio or looked it up online or something when we were talking about it. Now I want you to fact check it.
Yeah, no, me too. And I would love a link to this story if you could.
Yeah,
find
because
one.
I remember being like, holy, if it isn't true, I apologize, but it's definitely stuck with me because whenever these people were talking about it, I just couldn't get that out of my head. Like how fucked up that would be to probably already be nervous to get this thing done. And then you get it. And then you're like,
And something like that happens.
you're like,
it'd be
there's this
horrible.
ringing and I have these headaches all the time. And everyone's like, yeah, I don't know. This has never happened before.
And that's what's
then-
unfortunate.
Not to laugh at the guy who killed himself by any means, but it's like, sometimes I laugh when I'm uncomfortable, like just thinking of putting myself in those shoes, like, good Lord, it sounds like a literal nightmare, like a living nightmare. Like,
Absolutely. It would be. And that's a thing that we got to be very careful when we're putting our lives into the hands of medical professionals.
yeah, that they know what the fuck they're doing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like all it takes is one little molecule.
Yeah, no one's going down for some backwoods fucking laser eye surgery in
Oh
Guatemala.
God, no! I don't even know if I want the clean and sanitary people to
Exactly.
peel my eyes open. Like, oh
Well,
God.
I'm sure when you get there's probably a whole spiel that's supposed to make you feel comfortable, like, how safe it actually is. Same thing they tell you when you go on a plane and people are scared of that, or like whenever you get or like me right now, I'm borderline about getting a vasectomy and I'm kind of just like freaked out about it, even though everything I've read and all the videos I've seen is like, it's not a big deal. It's totally going to be fine. It's just I
that
don't know.
one little what if your
Well,
mind
surgery's a
focuses-
scary thing because
It is.
excuse me, because shit can happen, and like you said, be it a doctor not fucking knowing what they're doing, or I work in sterilization at the hospital, so that's another thing where if things aren't properly sterilized, so something that seems minor could potentially become a staph infection or something, or
Absolutely. And another thing to consider too is we're humans, and even doctors are too, and we can make mistakes. All it takes is one little. But I wouldn't be scared because
either way, I think my germophobia is showing a little bit.
that's fine. It's good. It's good to be safe and careful that way. But
Yeah.
another safe and careful we could consider too is the fact there's so many vasectomies that have been done, and it's a science that has been executed over and over and over and over.
Well, and there's like the one guy in Ottawa who does basically everyone's vasectomy. Did you know this?
oh no!
I think his name is Dr. Leidenheimer or something like that. Chris was talking about
What
him
are
on
we gonna do
episode
when he
2.
dies?
Used to be a guy who did like thousands. I think he's retired now.
There's a guy that every one of my guy friends that I've sort of discussed this with, they all end up bringing up this dude, whether they've had one or not. They know somebody who's had one. And apparently you go to what looks like a house, but it's in like a really rich neighborhood. So,
Yeah.
sometimes they convert a house into like a dentist's office and no one actually lives there. It's just downtown. They do that a lot. So I don't know. It sounds like the guy's been around doing it for decades. And I bet his track record's pretty damn good if he's
Well, that's just it. It's
stayed
much
in
like,
business,
It's much like kitchen work. When you do something over and over and over and over and over, the muscle memory comes really strong. So
Mm-hmm.
you do get to be a master at your craft eventually. What would
Imagine
scare
that
me
you
about
don't-
that, though, is what happens when he retires or passes away.
What happens when he retires because he had a stroke during someone's fucking vasectomy?
That would be scary. And the fact
The sneeze with the scalpel.
Oh, see, that's what I'm saying.
he's practicing out of his home is interesting.
Lots of articles on suicide linked to
Oh, there's lots?
stuff. Yeah, I couldn't pin down the one article.
It was in Ontario somewhere, yeah. Wow, so my dad looked it up, and apparently there's been multiple suicides linked to laser eye surgery.
Oh my god.
Or articles about it, rather. Maybe it's a few cases and just many articles. But either way, that's...
Well, that would make sense. Like it's right close to the head, and that's super close to the brain.
That's what I mean. Like, out of all the places to have something done, what are the most, what are the spaces that instantly feel the most vulnerable? Your brain, your eyes, your genitals.
And that's just it.
That's
And it
pretty
takes-
much
Sometimes it
top
could
3.
just be a matter of inflammation. If you did something a little bit wrong.
Just an
and-
infection gets in there or something, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Millions do it fine.
Yeah, that's true. Like, we are highlighting and discussing only the negative cases. But what I'm trying to highlight more is my fear that comes into play, or the ability to kind of like create scenarios in your head once there's any slight variable possibility that maybe something might go wrong. It's like if you buy a lottery ticket, you're probably not going to win, but you're buying a ticket because you might. So clearly you believe there's a chance. It's just like flipping that on its head in a negative way and being
That's
like,
exactly it. That's a very small example of
I live
when
my
our
life in fear.
mind does what would be better for us. And again, if we like earlier, like I said, the human mind has a tendency of doing that. It finds out one little negative thing and it'll focus on that. So that maybe those, let's say 5 guys that had that negative experience, that's what we're focused on instead of the hundreds of thousands that it's probably cured. So you got to kind of,
because everyone's
consider
like,
the bigger picture.
oh, I'm going to be one of the 5. Everyone thinks that, because if you haven't, you don't know, and there's a chance, and a chance is bad enough sometimes.
Well,
But
sometimes our mind can create things. We got to be careful with our minds as well.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, see, here's the difference, though. My thoughts going into the whole eye surgery thing would have been like, okay, if this goes bad, I'm going to be blind or I'm going to have like damaged eyes in some way. I would never think I'm going to have incessant headaches that lead me to suicide.
Right?
I don't know. But hey, another thing to consider, maybe this individual had issues, or maybe all these individuals were already borderline suicidal or had severe depression issues, and then maybe their neuroses was already kind of in play and the laser eye surgery just kind of was a trigger or something, you know?
Exactly. Maybe a little bit of placebo in there as well, too.
We'll never know.
Our minds are very powerful that way.
Either way, someone that listens to this is probably going to be like, that's it. I'm not getting the surgery. I'm sorry. I'm backing out.
For me, the fear is more, oh my God, I don't want to sit there while they stick a needle in my eye and peel a layer of it. I don't know if the
Is it a needle?
I don't know.
I thought it was just done with lasers.
I haven't watched it in a while. I mean, that could be old technology I'm thinking of.
Yeah, it's a big, I could tell you all about it, but not.
It's kind of a long spiel. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, look it up yourself, people. You have Google.
Google it. Google knows everything.
Okay, I wanted to get back to edibles, though, because the Edible Chef, let's say that a few times. The Edible Chef, follow her on Instagram.
Edible Chef 613.
Do you have other social media that you want people to hit you up on?
I mostly use Instagram and Facebook, really.
You should make some YouTube videos like of cooking shit and teaching people how.
That is exactly where I'm thinking and where I would like to go with it, and why I appreciate you inviting me in to kind of
come back
see how
anytime.
I do on the podcast. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and even just doing a podcast about cooking weed or edibles or whatever would be really interesting. But I do think a cooking show would be another way to go with like actual visual step by step.
That's what I'm hoping to do is I'm dreaming of going home and opening what I'd like to call a bud and breakfast.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it's where people can come and kind of experience if they're nervous, or, you know, the seasoned people can come and we can just have a huge smoke session.
You should look at that camera and like copyright bud and breakfast.
Bud and breakfast.
That's a fucking, if no one's
the
used
Edible
that.
Chef.
The sad thing is whenever I get good ideas like that now, I just Google it and I'm like, dreams crushed. Someone came up with this 4 years ago.
Right.
It's like so hard to be completely original nowadays.
I wish I can own that. Sadly, I can't. It was my friend Trina that coined that. Thanks, Trina.
If you
I'm
ever
running with it. I told her this.
Yes, thanks, Trina. If you ever start making drinks, though, you can use this and, collaborate here. I'm going to try and trademark this. I haven't actually looked it up yet. It might already be taken, but Chronic Tonic.
That's amazing.
It's probably taken, right? It's got to be taken. It's just hanging there.
Billions of us. Someone's probably using it, but have they copyrighted it?
Yeah. Man, how sweet would it be to be alive, like, in a different, maybe there's bad things about every time, but one thing I like about the less connected, less internet is like, if you had an idea like that, you could take it a lot further. Nowadays, it's a lot easier to just be like, oh, someone else has done it already, and be demotivated by that. Like just how many people there are. And,
absolutely. I was really surprised. I socked Edible Chef into the Google search and nothing, I couldn't find anything.
Yeah,
I'm
really?
like, are you kidding me? Mind you, this was like
just one cannibal. No,
yeah.
The Edible Chef. He's like,
well, now I'm starting to see it a little more. Like on Instagram, there is a tag with Edible Chef, and there is other people using it. But I don't know if anyone's tried branding themselves.
Are you
yet.
at the Edible Chef? Or what is your Instagram?
No, I believe there is another. Well, I think I was at the Edible Chef, but I put a 613 at the end of it as well too, just to kind of decipher myself.
Yeah.
I noticed there was another Edible Chef on Facebook too. She was down in the States somewhere. They were down in the States somewhere. I can't remember where. So that's when I kind of decided to distinguish myself a little more from that one term and put the 613 on the end as well.
This is a weird thing because when we were setting up to do this show. Oh, fucking hell. Chronic Tonic's taken. God damn it.
Damn it.
Uncopyrighted. Okay, well, regardless, on the topic of edibles, one thing that I think is really valid and we need to talk about is the fact that they're starting to hit the mainstream now, and it's actually starting to come out. You can go to the weed stores. I think last week or the week before that was the first shipment. And apparently it's all really low-level THC, the guy was telling me, and they don't have a lot of selection yet, and they don't have any of the beverages.
That's what's unfortunate is the limit that Health Canada has put on us, a 10 milligram limit.
Really?
10, and it's not per piece, that's per package.
Oh my God.
So
so they're selling like individual gummy bears, basically.
Pretty much. And at 10 milligrams, like anyone like us is probably going to need like 5 of them to feel anything.
Yeah.
So,
and they're probably priced at something ridiculous.
When it comes to monetizing the product, it's very good if you're the person that's benefiting from monetizing it. But as for the average person, I don't feel it's really fair. And I think it's kind of dangerous for... I don't know if it's going to help build the economy with that.
I think they're probably doing it, well, out of fear, obviously, but probably they're afraid that a bunch of people are going to pop edibles thinking that it's not going to be like drinking and driving. And obviously it's not exactly the same, but I would say it's probably equally unsafe.
Absolutely. It is unsafe.
Well, I'm saying equally unsafe.
Too is People have been doing it already for years too.
What?
So like
Edibles?
edibles and smoking and driving.
So smoking and driving, I don't think would be the same as edibles and driving at all. I definitely do have opinions about it because I do think there's a matter of tolerance to be taken in
Absolutely.
effect. If you are someone that is a regular user or like a medical user even, so you're very, very frequent, you don't get high. You get leveled or whatever you want to call it.
But I think it's because we've worked on building our tolerance. Don't consume and drive.
No, yeah, I'm not advocating that by any means.
Likewise.
But I do think it's something that when we keep rolling out the legalization and more research, not just, in edibles, but in how they affect these types of things and transportation research and whatever, I'm hoping that they will do actual studies. I like, what is the solution though, right? You let people take a test while they're stoned and get some sort of special weed license that lets them drive, and it's harder for them to tell. That's the other part. That's like, even if you do want to charge someone, how do you know how high they are? You know what I
That's
mean?
just it.
Well,
I haven't put a whole lot of thought into that.
Based
really.
on their driving, obviously, if they drove into a tree or something, they're pretty fucking high. But like one thing I find interesting is I have flower strains that I can, smoke in a joint or vaporize that have less than 1% THC. And it's just a high CBD strain for just, having the effects of CBD, with which anyone who's used will know is not psychotropic. It doesn't make you stoned at all. So
Absolutely. It just
where
kind
does
of
that
makes you
fall in?
feel
If I'm
good,
smoking a
anything.
CBD only joint and I get pulled over, can I just say, hey, I'm a medical user and this has next to no THC in it. I'll be on my way, thanks. Or is that going to get me fucking arrested?
Well, ideally, what I would like to see is maybe our government consider not treating us so much like children that way. Putting a little more trust in our hands that way, that we will tether ourselves.
Well,
and
I mean,
limit
right?
ourselves.
Because you could just as easily go buy a fucking 40 of vodka and chug it and get behind a wheel if you're a fucking moron. If you're a moron, you're a moron.
Exactly. That's how I feel.
But I
And-
think they're worried that people are going to underestimate the strength of edibles, not having the experience the way they do with decades of alcohol use and stuff like that.
And that is kind of a little bit of a factor as well, too, because another thing I should have mentioned back when we were talking about consuming and going through your digestive tract is there's a lot of factors that can either slow or like slow that down. So like if your stomach's full of food and you take an edible and you think you're feeling fine and then you go to drive an hour home, you digest your food, then that edible hits you, like that could be an issue, right? But then again, maybe the government could also trust that, we wouldn't drive if maybe we could consider these things. But that's where cannabis education is very important, knowing that people understand these things. And
Well, because many people report that they're more cautious when they're under the influence of marijuana, that they double check their mirrors and their seatbelt and all that because they have that bit of that paranoid edge from the weed where they're just a little more like, okay. And they know what they're doing is wrong, so they're extra
a little
cautious
extra
about
careful.
everything. Yeah.
I can't help but to agree with that. And I'm not 100%, but I think I actually remember reading an article way before we legalized it that was committed in the UK, I believe. And that's what the findings come out and said. Again, we might need a fact check.
Well, and the interesting thing is that, what it really comes down to in the end is every single person's different. Every body is different. Every brain is different. So you're never going to be able to make a blanket statement that's going to be 100% accurate to everyone. And I think that's why they stick with safe and being like, okay, no weed with driving. But the thing I find silly is if they're going to say no weed at all when you're driving, even CBD only strains because we can't distinguish or blah, blah, blah.
That's silly because we don't get the
Not only that, but you're
psychoactive
allowed to
effects.
have like X amount of alcohol and go drive. So you're not allowed a tiny amount of weed? Well, no, we don't know how to measure it. Okay, well.
Well, that's just it. And sadly, like, I know this is going to probably sound a little rude, but a lot of that is ignorance.
It is.
They don't understand. And a lot of these people making these policies and setting these laws, have they consumed? Have they done it themselves?
A lot of people with like staunch opinions on cannabis are often people that have never smoked a joint in their life. You know what I mean? And that I do find really, really silly and bizarre.
Absolutely.
I mean,
It is like I
formulate your
said
opinions.
earlier. I don't know enough. There was a topic we were talking about that I didn't, my knowledge, I'm not comfortable enough with it. So, is it okay for me to go set policies behind that?
No.
I feel
And I
that-
like just that you said that because there's some people, especially on the spot, that'll just start bullshitting because they don't want to admit that they don't know. And it takes like so much more balls to just say like, yeah, no, I don't really know that much about.
That's a healthy mind, I'd like to think. And
Oh yeah, definitely.
yeah.
So the other thing I was going to say is, what do you think when we keep going with this edible movement in legalization and all that? What do you think is going to be the outcome as far as like edible restaurants? Do you think we're going to have everything from fast food to like high-end dining, or do you think it's all going to sort of fall in the middle, or or just in general, what are your thoughts on sort of the restaurant business embracing a cannabis wave, so to speak?
That's a very interesting question. I'm not
I know
sure
when I wrote it down, I was
exactly
like, this is a sick question.
It is really good. Obviously, me being a chef, I would love to see it happen. I don't know if I see it happening on a fast food level where
Yeah,
it could be
that's-
that convenient.
Like drive-through. Yeah,
I would like to
drive-throughs
see
are
it
bad.
more happening on a level that you come into an experienced chef in their restaurant and they know how to properly take care of you.
Well, and when this first rolls out, someone's going to, it's going to start off high-end because it's going to be niche, so they know they can charge a lot.
Absolutely. And that's just it. Like there needs to be regulations there as well too. Because another thing we need to consider is when we commercialize this product, I believe it is necessary for safety, but we also need to be careful that we're not being too greedy about it. And think of the average person that doesn't make a lot of money that needs this to kind of feel better.
Well, talking about that, we can keep talking about the restaurant stuff, but let's address just the prices now with the legal stores. I don't know about you, but like...
Sometimes they're insane.
Well, put it this way. I generally try, excuse me, I've got crazy burp syndrome going on here. I try to keep it like pretty frugal when I go there. I try to pick the bags that are affordable. So like sometimes you'll see a good 3.5 gram bag for like $19.99, and that's like really cheap there, and I'll grab it. And usually it's pretty bunk ass weed when you buy the cheap stuff, but whatever. I try to go budget friendly, and even then I'm generally breaking even with like high school prices of like $1 a gram. That's like unacceptable to me. If I was a baller picking the strains I actually wanted, like a lot of these other people, I'd be spending like over $100 for like a quarter or something. Like, fuck off.
No, and that's just it. Some of them do get really expensive. Myself, I'm a fan of sativas. I like high CBD, and I was really excited to see this one strain that was like the best, the most pure sativa.
You're talking about Tangerine Dream?
What's that?
You're talking about Tangerine Dream?
No, it was another one. I'm almost afraid to say it because I don't want to name anyone or point fingers directly at anyone, but it was a celebrity that had their name attached.
Seth Rogen's
yes.
house plant?
Yes. Why does that guy need to charge $15 a gram for
I don't
his
know.
weed?
And for the record, I got nothing but love for Seth Rogen.
I
and
love him.
I would
Don't
love
get
to
me
have him
wrong,
on
I
this show.
do.
But like that'll ever happen.
But why $15 a gram when
yeah.
as per my studies, I'm pretty sure like these guys are cracking them off at, like they only
When
pay
you
a
should be
couple
paying
dollars to
$15 a
produce
gram?
it.
When you're in grade 9 and you're buying off of someone in grade 12 because it's the only person that's willing to talk to you and hook you up with weed, and then that you deserve to pay $15. That's
I was
part
still
of the,
smart enough not to pay $15 at that price.
I'd give $15 and the fucker wouldn't come back sometimes. And what are you going to do? He's like in senior year, he's going to kick the shit out of you if you try and front on him, right? Like
Yeah.
that definitely happened to me a few times, and then I tried to find better connections.
I think we need to be very careful how we're monetizing this product, what we're charging others. We need to keep it safe and fair. I think Hexo's doing an amazing job at that. They're coming out with a strain, I believe that.
I just had some of their stuff actually.
Yeah, how was it?
It was good from what I remember. Yeah, where did I get that? I got it downtown, one of the shops for sure.
So I'm a big fan of seeing companies like that think of the average person because there's a lot of poor people that use this product to help cope.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up very poor in Smiths Falls, and it was something that helped me cope with being bullied and being picked on because I was the nice, quiet, sweet girl, right?
It's just an escape a bit, yeah.
It was an escape for me, and I was also very anxious because of these things, and it shut my mind up.
Yeah,
So-
and weed can help you get in touch with your feelings and try to address.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of communities out there that really need this, particularly the trans community, the LGBTQ,
People
like,
who are dealing with a lot of stuff.
yeah, mothers who are taking care of their children, and they can't afford too much extra, but this is something that really benefits them and helps them relax at night. So I feel that we really really need to keep those people in mind. And yes, I'm all about, it's kind of cool that they're commercializing it, but just be careful that they're making
Don't alienate your audience. Yeah. Like,
absolutely.
for
Make
sure.
it accessible and reasonable for everybody.
yeah. Well, one hack I found with going to the store is if you want some CBD, the cheapest or one of the cheaper things that I found for like about $25.99, I think, for a half quarter.
Yeah.
It's called Free, and it's just CBD. So I don't know what the percentage is, maybe 14% CBD or something along those lines, maybe 16. But no THC. It won't really get you stoned at all. But just to buy that because it's cheaper and then cut it in with your other stuff when you're rolling joints and stuff, and it makes your more expensive weed last a little longer. I don't know. A little tip.
I like that idea. But another thing to consider too is CBD has also kind of been known, it may affect how you feel the THC. So it is a really good idea to cut it in. If you're someone who feels really anxious
Yes, I've
off
heard
of
this.
high CBD
Yeah.
strains, that could be very beneficial.
Or I can attest to this, actually, yeah, in my own personal use, that CBD was a big game changer for me because around the time, because honestly, when we were in high school, you couldn't get CBD.
No.
Or maybe you got it and we didn't know. I don't
And
know.
that's another reason why legalization and regulation of the product is very important because of just that. Back when it was just black market, a lot of those strains sadly got bred out because when people were buying it, they thought they were getting ripped off.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
they weren't feeling that high like you would off an indica.
Yeah.
But what they're not realizing is you are high just in a different way. It's more of a cerebral kind of effect.
Well,
That's
and
why
it
I
can
love
let
it.
you enjoy some pretty intense or otherwise intense strains that when you mix them with the CBD, you're like, oh, I get to enjoy this buzz now without the freak out part of it.
A little more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about this before on here, but sativas, or I was talking to you about this too. Sativas with exercise is pretty much the best combination ever.
Oh, makes you feel good.
It's as good as it is bad to take a sativa and just sit on the couch.
It is. Well, that's just it. If you're not
Those are
getting
the
up and
two ends.
working it.
Oh, then your mind will explode.
Exactly.
Oh,
So that's where you.
sativas are. I mean, it doesn't have to be exercise. I should rephrase that. It's an activity. Like, let's say you just like my advice is set up what you're gonna do so that it's very easy to just jump right in, and then smoke your joint or vape your whatever you're doing with your sativa. And once you start feeling it, just go. Whether it's going to the gym or you set up an easel and start painting, or
Keep your mind busy. Don't be
yeah,
sedentary.
and you'll be
on it.
amazed at your productivity. But yeah, wait until your buzz is over before you start chilling out. Much in the same way that you probably shouldn't hit a heavy indica if you're going to go and try to do something.
Absolutely. No, that's going to put you in the couch.
But isn't it interesting how some people break those rules completely? I know
It
some
is
people
funny.
that just hit indica constantly and they're still out doing shit. Like they just like it. They're like, no, it makes me feel relaxed.
It's probably a tolerance thing.
Yeah.
Or it's not just about indica and
Brain
sativa
chemistry.
either. Another thing that a lot of people don't consider that needs to be considered is also what is in your sativa and what is in your indica.
Meaning what?
So what's the CBD level?
okay, if
What's the
there's-
THC level? It's not just about that, but it's also about what we call the entourage effect as well too.
Okay.
So it's the terpenes that are involved with
Oh, the terpenes, yes.
Yeah.
So terpenes is something I think that not a lot of people, I mean, weed people know about them, and especially more now. So, but people who don't know a lot about cannabis probably don't know what terpenes are.
They don't consider it at all. And it's a very important part of the product you're taking in.
And it's a big part of the flavor and the smell of the pot.
Absolutely. So a terpene it's not just cannabis specific. It goes amongst all foods.
Exactly. That's what I was
So
going to say.
it's
yeah.
pretty much the essence or the oil of a food or a product. Yeah. So that's kind of where the edible chef kind of.
But what is a terpene though? Like, is it like a molecule or like, you know what I mean? Like when you say a terpene, like what is a terpene? It's, I guess, a tiny little microscopic molecule or something, right?
I think it's more the oil involved in the plant.
It's the oil. Okay.
Yeah. So
Can you Wikipedia terpenes? Just. Oh shit! Yeah, my dad's trying to multitask because he's got to switch. Okay, I'll
we're
just make
talking
sure.
about too much.
We'll make sure one of us talks for the next minute.
I'm a little embarrassed because I should know how to define terpene and how to describe this to you. But again, I think of my knowledge, it's pretty much the oil and the essence of the plant. So when, say, for example, you do the old school method where you take a bud and you put it between wax paper and you take like a flat iron and you squeeze all that stuff out. I believe that's the terpenes and the oils that come out of it.
People do that
Yeah. It's like a cheap man's kind of
to make oil or something. Oh
Yeah,
shit! I didn't
yeah.
know that.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's a good segue into what is your like methods when you, because I only, when I've ever tried to cook pot, I've only ever made canna butter, which is very easy to do from my experience. You just buy some butter, a few of those sticks, put in like a half ounce of grinded up weed, and then you put it through a cheesecloth after simmering for about 45
Have
minutes.
you activated your weed though before you put
So
it
that's
in
the decarbonization and all that. That's something that
Absolutely.
I never did,
That's
but
a
we
very
still got
important step.
plenty high.
Yeah, that would make sense because when you put it in the butter, it still hits that amount of heat.
Well, when it goes in the oven, yeah, exactly. Once you cook it, you're still. But I've been hearing about this. You can kind of like double the effects, or maybe.
Absolutely. Decarboxylation is something I've definitely put in my process, and I find it helps with the accuracy or potency, pardon me.
Sorry. My dad just brought me the phone with terpenes little info here.
Perfect.
They're a large and diverse class of organic compounds. Well, what the fuck is a compound? You know what I mean? Is a compound just another name for some small ass?
Different molecules.
Okay, so molecules. That was pretty much on
Yeah.
the point. It looks very chemistry oriented, everything I'm seeing here in the infographics. Anyways, so Jesus, that totally made me forget what we were on at that point.
Same here.
Well, we're
should lay out
both
the weed.
stoners, so yeah. Oh yeah,
Doing our best here.
your methods, because we were talking about how to make oil and shit like that. So yeah, I've made the butter where you simmer it with your weed in it for like 45 minutes, and then you strain it through a cheesecloth and put it back in the freezer or fridge, and then you have green butter that you can put in anything.
Yep.
And that's all I've ever done. But now a lot of people are making oils, making their own gummies. So how do you do stuff like that?
It depends how you want to do it.
Well, how do you do it?
How do I do it? When I started, I did the same way you did. Decarboxylation is something I have always used, though, because I want to make sure that the product is activated. It is there.
The utmost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did it a lot like you. I just put the water. I put water. Water's a very important step for me because water will help you control your heat. It'll help kind of take some of the chloroforms out of.
So water with the butter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, so when you put your butter in the pot and your weed in the pot, I'll put a little bit of water in there too.
Okay, interesting.
Because it'll kind of help me control my heat mostly.
So you would have already decarbonized or whatever before
I would have
this?
already decarboxylated it.
Oh,
Yes.
Jesus, okay, I'm totally saying that. I'm butchering that. Decarboxylated.
I hope I'm saying it right. Again, I need this credibility thing. I need to work on my words to make sure I'm hitting
No,
them
but you know what you're talking about. Yeah, because I always heard that part you do like just on a baking sheet, right? And you put it in like cookies,
Yes.
basically, just the weed by itself at that point.
Yes, just the weed. So what I'll do is I'll take my decarboxylated weed. Usually you can put it in the oven. You want to go really low because the thing to consider is when you hit about 300 to 350 degrees,
It's gonna light on fire. Or?
it's going to destroy the quality of your THC.
Okay.
It'll start kind of boiling it off, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah. So I usually do mine. I'll do it between 220 to 240 for about a half an hour, 40 minutes, just enough to just kind of, you'll smell it slightly, just wake it up just a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. So then after I do that, I'll take it, I'll put it in a pot, like I said, with butter, with water, boil it for anywhere between 3 to 4 hours. I usually
geez.
do. I like to do mine a while.
Okay.
And
What
then
does
I'll
that
strain it.
result in? The longer length? What are the benefits of that?
I think I just want to make sure that
Or that's just your style, maybe?
my style. Yeah. Well, that, and I'm probably stoned and forgot about it a little bit, to be honest.
Well, at least it doesn't ruin it if you forget, you know?
Absolutely. No. Low and slow. Chefs love low and slow.
Yeah.
And it's a very important thing when you're making edibles and consuming them as well, too. So, after I boil it for so long, because again, I try to really watch my heat when I'm working with the product. I want to keep my temperatures above 250, even if I can. I know some people can go a little higher. That's okay. But I'm usually pretty careful not to destroy as much quality as possible. And there is some terpenes that can I forget what the word I'm looking for, but pretty much scorch off
Oh, okay.
a little earlier.
Volatile compounds, so they'll.
Absolutely. They become volatile. That's
There you
what I was
go.
Thank you, Dad. I love biologists.
Yeah, he knows his shit most of the time from what I've seen. Okay, so, and then you make your butter that way, just like everybody else, but yours is a little more particular and probably more powerful.
Another tip I would like to give too is when you're straining your butter, be careful not to squeeze your cheesecloth.
Oh, really? I definitely
Even
have
though you
squeezed
want
the
to-
shit out of it.
You're actually squeezing a lot of plant matter in with it. So it could
And that's bad?
it can be.
It'll affect
Again,
the
it
taste
depends
more.
on what kind of quality you're looking for, right? So it's going to impart a lot more green in your butter. It's going to look cool, but if you want to keep it a little more like a butter product, then
Interesting.
yeah. But at
I
the
always
same
thought it was just like, oh, I got to get all the good
I
THC
was
stuff
always
or
like
whatever.
that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I use tongs to squeeze the shit out of it.
But when you squeeze it too, another thing to consider, particularly when you decarboxylate first, is that you're kind of getting that little bit of an ash taste in there as well.
Well, that's
too.
what I was going to say.
And the burnt plant matter.
The reason I probably never minded is because everything leading up to that point, all my marijuana cooking experiences had been in high school where no one knew what the fuck they were doing, and you would just cut up weed and throw it into the cookie mix.
Absolutely.
And
And it still worked, though. It got
Not
us high.
as well at all.
No, you didn't think so?
And it tasted like shit.
Right?
Oh.
Well, that's just it. The very first batch of cookies I made was like that, and everybody complained about the gritty texture. I didn't like that, so that's why I started studying and figuring out, well, what can I do to help that?
Well, once you make butter, then I find it actually becomes like a pleasurable accent. It's like this new spice that you didn't have in your repertoire or whatever of spices when you're making food. I honestly feel that way because a big thing I was going to mention that we discovered was everybody usually sticks to like, you know, sweets when they're doing edibles for the most part. But we made spaghetti one time and we just put some butter in with the noodles. We called it rasta pasta
That's awesome.
or spaghettiwana. And that was fucking delicious. I honestly was the first time where I went, wow, weed has its own taste and it can be kind of fucking yummy if you
I
do
think
it right.
that was actually my first edible experience
Rasta pasta?
before I even started making them. And this is, I think, kind of what inspired me to get into making my own products. Was a friend did that once.
Nice.
He took, oh my God, like an ungodly amount of weed. It just like socked it. It looked like ground beef, but it was weed. Like that's how much was in this. But oh my God, like by the end of the night or like maybe a half hour or an hour after eating it, like we were all falling off the couch just laughing hysterically. Like there's so much and we were so high. And it kind of inspired me to keep making
Positive
delicious
experience
things.
association will definitely, lead to wanting to do that more.
Yeah, well, I remember how happy I was and I like to laugh. It makes me feel good. I think laughing is very good for the soul and the body.
Damn straight.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to say while we're still talking about edibles is I've been thinking that the drinks, whenever they come out, I'm mainly worried that it's going to be super appealing to kids in the same way that energy drinks were like this massive craze that just hit the teen market and they seem to be the biggest consumers. That and like douchebags and Jeeps. But you know what I mean? Like I just feel like when Monster and all that shit came out and Rockstar, it went from like never seeing them to seeing them everywhere. And a lot of it was really young kids.
I feel the same way about gummies, to be honest.
Oh, yeah?
That's why when I started with the Edible Chef, I tried to do more nutritious, healthier options. Because like I said, that is kind of my niche of cooking as well, too. I wanted to make people feel good. And I was more thinking about the cancer patients that we're feeding and they can't have sugar. That's dangerous for them. And not just that, it's like you said, gummies, I feel, is also a product that's very appealing to children.
Yeah.
So it's, the Health Canada seems very strict on making sure these products aren't appealing
It makes
for kids.
sense in a way, honestly.
It does, but what's unfortunate is everybody wants the gummies.
I was going to say, like,
That's what
grown-ups
they're
like
looking.
gummies, too. That's the problem.
Everybody wants gummies. So I couldn't help but to start that technique.
It's not like
and
when you
start
become
practicing.
an adult, you stop liking candy. You know what I mean? Candy doesn't belong only to kids. You know?
That's just it. And I think it's the convenience of the catalyst as well, too, where you can just grab a gummy, pop it, and go.
And yeah.
So rather than, like with a brownies are great. They're delicious, but you got to sit there and, like you take a piece. It's crumbly. It's messy.
That's so true.
Yeah. You can still kind of smell it. Gummies are good at masking the smell, I find, a little more, too.
Yeah. Honestly, there's a lot of options out there now, too. That's why I think the drinks is
I don't
kind
know
of
if
weird.
I'm a fan of the drinks.
I don't know. They're just the ones that's kind of like perplexing me the most.
And again, like the drinks, it kind of ties back to I'd like to see, I'm a little more grassroots movement about this. I'd like to see it accessible to everyone. And I don't think the drink option is something that just anyone can create. I think it's more of a corporate kind of derived
I
option.
see what you're saying. Why? Just because the packaging and all that? Well, there's a lot of craft breweries and
the
shit.
process, like what it takes to make it.
Well, if there's a way and it becomes legal, there's going to be startups who figure out how to do it themselves and run independent breweries or whatever you want to call these
Very
places
true.
that make. Well, what I was going to say too is I'm pretty sure there's places in the States, maybe I'm wrong about this, where they've started making alcohol weed combined drinks.
See, that's another thing that I kind of like. How
what do you
come
call
the average
that?
person can't do it, but it's okay for corporations to get into it?
Yeah.
Similar with Red Bull and vodka. When
yeah.
Red Bull first come out, there was a clear thing on their can that said, "Do not
do
mix
this."
with
Yeah.
alcohol."
That
And a
drink should be
couple-
called the Heart Attack.
right.
Yeah.
And then a couple years later, here's Red Bull and vodka.
Yeah.
It's okay for this
Or
corporation
Jaeger
to do
bombs,
it.
everybody does.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, when I
just-
turned 30, I had a party and we were at Heart and Crown and somebody bought me one or two of, it was some sort of drink with Red Bull and something that made it taste like kind of like Skittles. So it was very delicious, but
Dangerous.
I got really like sick that night, and I don't get sick when I drink usually because I know my limits. And it was the added like rush of all that amped up energy.
Sugar.
It just gave me like the
So much
spins.
sugar
well, that
in those
too, yeah, the
things.
sugar, but taurine and whatever other fucking garbage chemicals are in there,
Right. And that's just it. And that's another thing too, where I think I'm kind of more of a fan of the grassroots kind of movement or grassroots movement that way, because it's a little more natural products. Whereas, when it's processed in a company like that, you never know what they're putting in there.
Yeah,
with
it's
it.
the same thing with everything in the grocery store, honestly. I always wonder. I'm always trying to check ingredients now because I had read somewhere online that like you should try to eat foods that have like less than 5 ingredients or something like that.
And ingredients you can read.
Well, yeah, oh my God. Yeah, something that has like 12 syllables, maybe
Right?
not so good for you.
I
But then
gotta
sometimes
be-
I look them up and it's like actually sounds pretty harmless. So I don't know. I think that a lot of technical mumbo jumbo can be intimidating also.
It can be.
You know what I mean? So it's people can freak out either way, but really should just do the research, I guess.
Absolutely. And speaking of the research, like maybe that is something I should be against, because it's much like vegetarian food and eating too. And one thing to consider, if we go back to like grade 10 science, is not all chemicals are bad either. Chemicals
exactly,
is a natural part of life, and it's just
They're in everything.
Us taking chemicals and combining them. That's when we get those super crazy words that we can't pronounce.
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's like a horrible thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people have that reaction, you know, as soon as you see a big scary science word, it's like, this probably shouldn't be going in my body. And probably that's true on a lot of cases, I would think. But, okay, I don't know what time it is. We're getting there. I think we've been doing for a while now, but whatever.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure to fit in that you had brought some samples of your edibles.
I was hoping we would get to that, actually.
Definitely.
I was tempted to pull them out when we started speaking about gummies, but I didn't want to interrupt either.
Well, here's the big reveal then.
Yay.
So the edible chef again has brought some edibles, and I'm very curious.
I'm here to spoil you. Okay, so left over here from the holidays, I have some chocolate avocado cake that I like to make.
Okay, you mentioned this, and that sounded very interesting to me because I've never heard that combined before.
Absolutely. Well, again, with what I like to do with the Edible Chef is I like to create edibles and things that taste really good and that we can enjoy, but things are a little healthier for you as well too. So I find with the avocado, you put it in baked goods, you can kind of replace a lot of the milk and the dairy and the butter and the really fattening things.
It's true because avocado doesn't have an overwhelmingly powerful taste. It's kind of like I don't want to say bland, but you know what I mean. Like if you eat just a piece of avocado with no salt, it's kind of not completely flavorless, but it doesn't, pop a lot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not overwhelming, maybe is the word
exactly.
we're looking for here. Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, it is a very good nutritious substitute. So what I like to do here is, instead of the butter and the cream, which I do really like and enjoy, and sometimes it's very hard to replace.
Of course.
I feel avocado is really good at that. And it's a monounsaturated fat too. So it's a much better fat for you than the dairy fat.
I'm very interested to try this. So how strong are we talking here? Like if I ate a full one of these, am I going to be like,
I think you're going to feel it a little bit. Do you have anything to do later tonight?
I'm playing board games with my buddy tonight. That's about it.
Oh my God, that's going to help intensify it then.
Maybe I'll eat it slow and see how it kicks in.
Absolutely.
My main problem with edibles is that I usually just want to sleep. I always get. Do you put sativa in your edibles? Because that would be awesome.
That's just it too. I made these a while ago. I can't remember exactly
So it's like
what I used in it, to be honest.
Buy the ticket, take the ride.
This is the work I've been doing with my edibles as well too. Is the edibles I made years ago are much different. Probably even less than a year ago, are much different than the ones I create now. Because now my knowledge is more extensive. I do know the difference between indica and sativa. I do know about the terpenes.
So you can utilize that in your
I'm starting to work this into my process a little more.
We got one who's knocked
Are they still
over.
frozen?
One fell over into the other one and kind of they melded one
together.
Super
That's
cupcake.
okay. The package is yours.
Yeah,
I would totally eat one with you.
Yeah, go for it.
And again, same with the dosing and the accuracy there. It's something I've very recently learned about and started putting into my practice more. I'm going to guess that these would be about a 35 to 50 milligram dosage.
Okay, I might eat like half that. I'm trying to think back to when I was buying gummies because those were usually like 10 or 15 each, I think, right? In a gummy bear. And I would usually eat 2 and I would feel it. So I think 30 is probably the mark where I start feeling it. Okay. And 50 is probably like pretty good. Either way,
start again. This is great advice. If you're not ever sure how to start or how to enjoy an edible, always start low.
Small
doses. So if you
then wait.
Absolutely. So I would suggest starting with half of it. Wait a half an hour to an hour at least, because you never know what's in your stomach.
Just toss it in the fridge and let yourself digest a bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So definitely start with half an hour. See how you feel. If you're not feeling it the way you feel you should, then definitely try some more.
I'm going to try and show the camera. You got this, Dad? Just because, the 2 at the bottom are smushed, but let's get that one up there because that's the most presentable.
You got a little shifty.
All I saw was box.
Oh, okay.
Got it angled the wrong way.
Like that?
Nope.
Well, you're on the wrong camera then, no?
Oh, wait.
Literally.
Okay.
Yeah.
He hasn't even ate any yet.
So, the one up top is the most pristine looking one. The other one's got a little mangled, but I'm going to definitely take a bite of this if you want to take one too.
I think I might, yes, because
I'm at least starting off with a nice, healthy bite.
I'll be fine. I'll take the messy one. I'll clean the mess up for you.
Nice. It's got kind of like almost like a minor tartness to the cream. But it's good. It's not overpowering.
Good. I'm glad you enjoy it. The freezer did dry it out a little bit.
Well,
Usually it's much more moist when
I'm
it's
not
fresh.
having too much trouble with that.
Good.
No, it's pretty
Good.
good.
No, they do still. Because I was also, to be honest, I was a little worried because I haven't tested this to see the freezability of the product. So that's
Well,
the thing with baked
yeah,
goods.
it turned out well.
No, they're still
I'm
very
wondering
tasty.
that little tinge that I'm talking about of not really sour, but like tartness. Is that coming from the avocado or from the weed?
This is coming. So the icing I used as well is avocado icing.
Oh, okay.
So that's
it
that-
probably is the avocado.
That zing is the avocado.
It
you're
almost
feeling
gives it
from.
like a little hint. I don't want to say lime, but kind of like a citrusy little mix in there. I'm going to take one more bite.
Because when I made the icing, I actually used a little lemon juice. So I mashed up the avocado. I put a little lemon juice in with it because it helps keep that nice vibrant green color and it'll help it pop.
Oh, nice.
So then after that, I just take it and I mix it with a buttercream, either one I've made or I cheat because I went to Bulk Barn. I just got some of their buttercream and mixed in with it. It was
Whatever.
perfect. My mind faded there a bit because I forgot to ask about allergies, and that's something I should have done before feeding you.
I start going into anaphylactic shock.
Please don't. I am
Like that was the last
trained,
episode.
but I'd rather not have
Number
to use
13
that.
was a curse. He died that day.
I love that I'm number 13. Like, this was a perfect time for me
That's
to
cool.
come
No,
over.
I
and
feel
I'm
like
really enjoying this.
You're super easy to talk to. Yeah.
Good.
The only thing I think is maybe we should have eaten these earlier, and it probably would have gotten pretty hilarious. But
Probably. That's okay. I'll have to come back. And
exactly.
see you
Yeah.
sometime.
Any of my guests can come back.
I like that you find me very easy to talk to because that's why I'm thinking about getting into more educating and kind of talking to people for a living. And
Oh, yeah.
stuff.
I don't think you're going to have any problem with that.
Perfect. Because I know I can use my hands. They're quite effective. I love them very much. But I also want to start using this a little more. I feel it's good and I want to get that out there.
You're well spoken and you're personable. I don't think you have anything to worry about.
Thank you. Aw.
Compliments.
So.
I should have brought napkins, though.
Yes.
just
Actually,
use my
I should have warned you
pockets.
how messy these were. So these are the gummies I've been developing. I've
shit.
been working on them about a month or so.
Okay. Ominous, opaque package.
I brought one for you and one for your dad.
Okay.
So
There you go, Dad.
there's 3 per package. I'd say per gummy, maybe about 15 to 20 milligrams.
So it's not that bad.
No, it's not that bad. So I feel and I'm curious. And if you wouldn't mind, if you're willing to try one, I would love your feedback. I'd like to know how they hit you.
Yeah, he won't try it here because he's got to drive home and shit. And after the last edible experience, I'm sure cautious. Well, you guys ate some shit after that, though, right? I gave you a chocolate bar and you dabbled again. Yeah. So you guys told me that Mom ended up having some pretty okay experiences after, right? Where she felt like it was kind of like wine and it made her want to dance or something.
Yeah, like we got some gummies, right? And we had the CBD oil.
Oh, okay. CBD oil and gummies.
That is another thing too.
So there you go. It was the CBD probably mellowed you out a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. No, and again, CBD may counteract the effects of THC sometimes. So that
I heard it
kind
didn't
of
counteract as much as just sort of like makes them kind of hit you smoother. You know, like I didn't know it actually lowers the THC effect as much as just takes away the paranoia and those anxiety.
I think you may be right there.
I'm not
because
positive, but-
I think I am kind of spewing a little outdated information because in my training and stuff, I have also learned, like, because I've applied it, I'm interested in getting into working with dispensaries and stuff. That is one thing we have learned is that we're not allowed to dole out that kind of advice, that CBD will help you feel that less.
Actually, they're not allowed to say shit. When I went to Superette, they're not allowed to give you any, like, I'll be like, hey, so what'd you think of this strain? Is it pretty good for this? And they'll just be like, we're not allowed to give you our personal opinions. And sometimes they try to sort of indirectly find ways of telling you, like, it might be a good choice for you.
I think that's a little too far. I don't know if I agree with that. I think what's very important to keep in mind, and this is something I used in the interview, we are not doctors. Much like earlier I said, I'm not a biologist. It's very important to kind of...
So you don't think they should? You think they got that right?
I think when it comes to personal preference as to how they feel from it, I don't think there's anything wrong with
as
sharing
long
that.
as you specify that this is my opinion and
Exactly.
it's not,
This is how I feel. And
Yeah.
something that they could also say is this may not be the way you feel from it.
Well, you have to, yeah, because
Yeah.
that's guaranteed. Everybody's different. You never know for sure. But it is nice sometimes to get feedback from, like, let's say you're someone like us who you're not really afraid. Like, when I go into a weed store, I'm like, okay, I could pretty much try or smoke or whatever, any blend in here, and I might get really high, but I'm not going to, like, have a nervous breakdown or, like, jump in front of a car or some crazy shit. You know what I mean? Like, so, I don't know. Like, I don't really get freaked out when I try weed like that, but...
Same here.
Yeah, it would be nice to be able to ask a person that also is like that, who smokes or whatever regularly, because I think those two people could have that discussion, and that person's opinion might actually be super helpful because we're both stoners and we're on the same
Absolutely.
page. You know what I mean?
Well, I think there's got to be some kind of similarities for people, like between people.
I think that's why they don't let them, is because you might get a case where someone's who works there is like a heavy user, and then they're giving an advice or opinion on a strain to someone that's newer to cannabis, and then maybe that might blow their fucking brains off, you know?
That's just it. But I would hope the person that dispensary would employ would know enough to.
Comes down to proper training, yeah.
Absolutely. So if they're a heavy user, and they're telling new people to go with the 20 or plus percent, like, no, that's wrong.
Which I don't think they're doing. If anything, when I've been to Superette, which is the store in town that I've gone to the most, they've been super cool. Like all the customer service there is great. Everybody asks you if you're having any trouble or if you need any advice, and I've heard people talking to people that were complete newbies, and they gave them the right advice, like maybe stick to lower THC. And
they were amazing when I went there. Actually, when I developed my infographic on the post-workout, pre-workout we were talking about, that's actually where I went to get my strains, and they were very helpful in helping me choose what strains I needed.
The only issue I have is the pricing, and I don't think that's really up to them. So
I have an issue with that a little bit too, to be honest, and it would be kind of nice to see it. I mean, if the legal market wants to destroy the black market, the best way to do that is give us something we can afford.
Yeah, we want weed and Giant Tiger.
I like that it's in Shoppers Drug Mart. That's amazing, because I have a prescription.
Oh, it is now. That's right.
Yeah. Well, the beautiful thing about Shoppers Drug Mart being a licensed provider is that they actually have struck a deal, or pardon me, as a provider, is they've struck a deal with 10 different licensed providers. So when you take your prescription to them, you have so much more product to choose from than just one particular. When I first got my prescription and I went with a licensed provider, I went with straight up Aurora, because I am a fan. I'm a fan of the company. They've had some of the best CBD oil that I've got. Speaking of CBD oil,
okay,
I did bring my bottle because I know you said that your father may have been interested in some CBD gummies. I didn't have anything to offer, but what I can offer is, if you want me to dose something with some CBD, that's very.
You guys picked some up though, didn't you?
Oh, you have some?
Yeah,
Perfect.
They bought some. Thank you, though.
Oh, no problem.
I don't have any, mind you. I've never really fucked with the oils, to be honest, other than if someone put it in food, I guess I might have eaten that. But I've never done just straight oils and put them on your tongue. It seemed like the most, like from a stoner who enjoys smoking joints and stuff, it seemed like the most boring way I could possibly put weed into my system, like a little dabber under the tongue or whatever. Like I enjoy vaping and blazing and whatever, and eating it. So
I'm the same way. I like the ways of consuming that are a little more socially involved.
Yeah, and for me, I don't care if I'm smoking a joint by myself or vaping or whatever. I'm still probably going to enjoy it more than just. I mean, a drop on the tongue or whatever is so quick, and I like that option's there for people who don't like the stoner side of cannabis, but maybe have arthritis or whatever, and they just want to be super discreet about it,
And they want to get it in. They're not used to the taste either.
Well, that too, yeah. Just quick
it is
and easy.
A very powerful
Put it in your
thing.
orange juice or whatever, yeah.
Yep.
That's something I've heard too, that if you take shrooms, and maybe this is one of those fucking urban legends or whatever, but I had heard in high school that if you take shrooms and then you eat oranges or drink orange juice, that something about the vitamin C is supposed to increase the hallucinations and the visuals that you get. I have no idea if there's any truth to that.
That's interesting. I'll have to do some more research on that.
Or mango or something like that.
Mango.
Oh, mango is a thing?
You might be mixing it up with mango.
I think I've heard both, actually. But
And mango can actually and may intensify the effects of THC.
so that's not for
because,
shrooms. That's just for weed.
Pardon me?
So mango's for weed as opposed to shrooms. Okay.
I think so. I think it's a weed thing you're thinking of. The reason for that being, again, ties back to the terpenes that we were talking about. So because a lot of cannabis strains, or pardon me, let's go the other way. Mango has a terpene called, is it mycrene or mycene?
Mycene.
Mycene.
Yeah.
So mangoes are very high in mycene.
Oh no, myrcene.
Myrcene.
Yeah.
That's it. Again, I need to like Google to just.
Myrcene's in a lot of weed too. It's like the earthy one. You find it in beer and hops, I believe, too. And it's so all the strains that taste kind of earthy, and mushrooms I think have myrcene too.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I can't remember.
That's what
I have another infographic on this. My brain has been through so much lately, though.
I know
I'm
a girl
hard
named
time
Jenna
thinking.
you should meet her, actually. She's my friend's girlfriend. Well, she's many things, but that's one of the things. They're in a relationship, and she works at a place called Hybrid Farm.
Okay.
in town, and they're like a pharmacy that specializes in.
That's my phone. Sorry, I
That's
should
your
have turned
phone?
the volume down.
Okay. Oh, that's okay. Is it gonna ring for a while or no?
I don't think so. It'll go off in like maybe 10 seconds. Sorry.
We'll just wait. We'll wait. Just rock it out. What is this song?
I don't know. It's
there we
like the
go.
one that come when I bought the phone, and it's funny. I'll be sitting like out in public, and I'll hear someone else's phone go off with the same thing.
Yeah, that's why you gotta switch it. It's so
I know.
weird.
I gotta change it. I do.
You know what happens to me that's very specific to my name? I don't know if you have this for your name. Your name's Barbara, so I don't know if this happens with anything. But anyways, I hear someone say, "Oh, is she coming? And is she gonna bring her stuff?" And they'll be like, "Yeah, she's gonna bring all of her stuff." And then I hear Oliver, and it gets me every time. Yeah, all of her stuff. Yeah, or whatever.
That's
Isn't that weird?
hilarious.
It's happened to me several times though. Okay, we should probably start wrapping this up because
Yes,
I gotta
it's
take.
unfortunate. I'm having so much fun.
Yeah,
here.
you'll have to come back, and I'll
Absolutely, anytime. I would love that, and I'd love
happily
to meet
accept
Jenna.
these gifts. Oh yeah, Jenna too. I want to have her on here, but definitely look up Hybrid Farm. Shout out
I
to
will.
Hybrid Farm because they're
I'll be
doing
looking
they're
you
doing
up.
good stuff, and they're all about the terpenes and the science and
Beautiful.
yeah, they're on Richmond, I think, or they're somewhere out here in the West End.
Okay.
Really cool initiative that they're doing though. So the one thing I want to ask you before you leave, we ask everybody is if you could have, you can look over here for inspiration, but if you could be endowed with some superpower, superhuman ability, what would it be? You could take a minute to think. We vetoed flying because it's such an obvious like answer. Everybody would like to fly, so that's not really allowed anymore.
Yeah.
But anything else? And you're not picking like a character, like I want to be Spider-Man.
Oh, okay.
You know, just a power, one ability, and why?
Superpower?
Yeah, it could be anything. We've had some weird ones.
I think I'd like to read minds. I'd like to see what people are thinking.
Okay, I think we've had one person say that before, but that's always an interesting one to me because it seems like it could be such a slippery slope, you know?
It can be. You don't want to look into the wrong head, right?
There's that. There's also, can you shut it off, or are you just always hearing people's thoughts, no matter
This
what?
is true. And wasn't there like a book or a movie or something
I think
on
they've done
that?
that in several superhero-y type shows where
Yeah.
someone's like, it's too much, I can't handle it, and they're like hearing everybody's fucking voices at the same time and shit.
There's one in particular in my head. I can't think of it, though. It's on the tip of my tongue where I'm kind of getting that.
I'm thinking
That
of
would be unfortunate.
one example I can think of is that show. I don't know if you ever saw it. It was on for like one season. It was called No Ordinary Family. It was a family that got superpowers in like a fucking plane crash or something. It had Michael Chiklis from The Shield, who also played the Thing in the Fantastic Four. And the girl was, she could read minds or hear thoughts or whatever. And she had episodes where she was like freaking out because she would go to school and it was like she could hear everyone whispering about her, but they weren't
Yeah.
actually whispering. But you know what I mean? Like she would hear all the gossipy thoughts and it was like messing with her. So that's why, as long as you could control it, I guess it's an all right one. But it also seems like a slippery slope for your own moral compass because you now have this ability that's kind of like you can peer into people's private shit, essentially. Like you could use it to, I mean, I'm not saying you would, but maybe you're going to be in a situation where you're like, I kind of want to know if I got the job, or like just do something that some people might say, well, isn't that an invasion of privacy at
I guess
all?
so. Yeah, I think you might be pretty right there.
It's interesting. I like asking this
if I
question.
did have it, I would like to be able to shut it off and on.
That's
Absolutely.
kind of odd.
If it was something that was a continuous thing I couldn't control, I would not do well with that.
But why do you want it? I guess is more why I'm. What do you think about you made you answer that? I love asking this question to people because
Again, I think it's anxiety.
Oh, so
think-
I can actually kind of relate to that then.
Yeah,
Where you're
yeah.
kind of like imagining.
You're always wondering what other people are thinking, and your mind is always telling you what they're thinking, and that may not always necessarily be true. So
But
I
what
guess
if it ends up being true or worse?
well, that's just it. So
Could
yes,
add to
it
your
would
anxiety.
be quite destructive as
Yeah.
well too. You're right.
Shit, man. This is what I'm saying. This is like any kind of a genie 3 wishes type thing. It's hard to answer on the spot because then you think about it more and you're like, oh shit, that was maybe
I
not the
shouldn't
best.
have answered that. Now what do I want to do?
Well, hey man, we've gotten some weird ones. Jesse said he wanted to be able to turn into ooze like Alex Mack. If you
That would
remember
be
that
cool.
show.
Squeeze into places that most people can't
That's
go.
probably about one of the weirdest ones. Though honestly, the most common one is invisibility. We've gotten that like 5 times. But anyways, that's
I don't know
usually
if
how
I
we.
want to be invisible.
I don't think so either. Again,
No.
it's one of these things where you get tempted to be creepy. Probably after a certain amount of time, you get bored and you're like, "What can I get away with?"
Well, I can get away with this.
Spying on people. I'm not even talking just like sexual things, but like just trying to hear what someone's talking about you, or find out about something secretive, whatever it may be. Anyways, that's usually where we wrap things up is with the
Okay.
superhero question,
I
and then
love
we.
the spawn on your mic, by the way.
Oh, it's Carnage.
Oh, pardon me. Not Spawn.
You
I meant
lose
to say
30 nerd
Venom, and that
points.
would have been wrong too.
Yeah.
Again, can we edit this?
Venom would have been closer at least. You picked someone from
know.
a completely different comics universe.
That's my mind too. This is why I never sing or I can't do lyrics, right? Because I'm always singing the wrong shit.
No, Biggie. Carnage is here. Thanks
Sorry,
to
Carnage.
Janelle again for
You're
Carnage.
cool looking, bud.
Yeah, so high five is how we end it. Boom.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh,
wait,
fuck. I got to lean in for these.
Elbows.
There
we go.
Elbows. Yeah, so that's it, everybody. Subscribe. Tell your friends.
Yay.
Come back next week.
Edible Chef 613.
Yeah,
Come
sorry.
check me
Yeah,
out.
plug your shit too. All right, you got to play me on the arcade, and then that's it.
Awesome. Perfect.
Take a
Thank
picture.
you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Oh, this was fun.